The wind came low and steady from the north that evening, dragging long breaths of cold across the hills and slipping between the broken boards of the old horse barn. Dusk had fallen without ceremony, and the world dimmed not with fanfare, but with quiet surrender, like a tired sigh at the end of a long road. Snow clung to the fence posts, curled in the corners of the roof, and softened the hooves of the lone horse that approached through the hush. He did not come fast. The Lakota warrior rode like the dusk itself, quiet, calm, inevitable. His braid was dusted white with frost, and the rawhide strips tied to his bridle whispered with the wind as if carrying words from somewhere far behind him. He did not look left or right, only forward. The town was no more than 20 buildings huddled like cold bodies, smoke rising in ribbons from chimneys that burned pine and fear. No one greeted him. He dismounted at the livery without a word, tying his horse loosely to a post worn smooth with other men's journeys. The stable door groaned as he pushed it open, the hinges protesting like old bones. Inside, the scent of horse sweat, hay, and neglect filled the still air. A lantern burned low in the corner, half buried in grain sacks. The man who ran the place had stepped out, likely into the saloon, leaving the barn to ghosts and tired animals. He moved slowly between the stalls, boots crunching straw. There was no need to rush. The horse he meant to trade for was penned near the back, according to the notes scratched into the beam outside. A dun mare for winters old, sound of step and eye. But the warrior did not go straight to her. His eyes wandered. He listened. And then he heard it. It wasn't loud, barely more than a shuffle, like fabric shifting or a body shifting its weight without permission. He stopped, tilted his head slightly. No wind, no creak, just the sound again, so small it might have been a rat. But rats didn't hold their breath when you got close. He stepped to the farthest stall, one supposedly empty. The door hung slightly ajar, a rusted nail catching the slat. He nudged it open with the back of his hand. At first, he saw nothing, just shadows and hay packed thick into the corner. But then he saw her feet, bare, pale, smudged with dirt. She was wedged into the space like something discarded, knees pulled to her chest, wrists tied cruel, behind her back with a strip of split cloth. A bruise bloomed along her jaw like a petal gone wrong. Her eyes opened when he stepped forward. Not wide, not wild, just open, watching. She didn't cry out, didn't speak, just breathed shallow and tight. A girl made a silence. He crouched, slowly, palm raised. No threat, just presence. She flinched when he reached for the rope, but only once, as if her body remembered fear even if her mind was done with it. The knots had been tied by someone impatient, not expertly, but tight. He used the edge of his belt knife to cut them, letting the bindings fall into the straw like snakes killed in sleep. She didn't move, not right away. He stood and stepped back, gave her space. There was a tin cup by the feed bin, and he filled it from the water bucket, then set it gently beside her. She reached for it with shaking hands, but drank. 3 gulps. Then stillness. The fire in her eyes didn't return. It had never left. But it blinked slower now, as if willing to stay lit a little longer. He didn't ask questions. Not yet. He sat against the stall beam and waited. Outside, a dog barked once. A wagon creaked along the main road. Somewhere, laughter cut through the air and then died, like someone had told a joke that shouldn't have been told. After a long while, she spoke. Thought maybe I died in here. Her voice was raw, like river stones scraped thin. He didn't answer. She nodded to herself, like she hadn't expected one. You don't look like the man who put me here. I'm not. That's good. Silence again. But not empty. The kind that held things in it. Breathing, healing, deciding. He looked at her then. Not at the bruises, not at the torn hem of her dress, or the faint blood at her knuckles. He looked at her eyes. They were the color of a storm that had already passed. What's your name? He asked. She hesitated. Annaline, she said at last. Then, after a breath, used to be. You're still her. She didn't answer that. Just leaned her head back against the wood and closed her eyes. He waited until her breathing evened, then stood. He didn't touch her. He didn't ask anything more. But before he left the stall, he said, "There's a fire an hour north of here. Not much, but warm. You can come if you want." Her eyes opened, met his. No fear now. Just that storm again, watching to see if he'd vanish like all the others. "Why would you help?" He thought a moment. The words weren't hard, just old. Because someone should have. He stepped back into the barn aisle, waited, counted his heartbeats in the dim. 1, 2, 12. Then he heard her stand. She limped out of the stall with the rope still tangled around one wrist, like a memory too stubborn to fall away. He took it gently, cut the last knot loose. She didn't thank him, but she stayed. They walked side by side to his horse, the snow whispering around their steps. He lifted her up, slow and steady, onto the saddle, and then climbed behind. As they rode into the dark, she leaned slightly into his chest. Not for warmth, not even for safety, just so her heartbeat could find something steady to rest against, for the first time in too long. Behind them, the barn sagged with its secrets, and the town kept drinking and laughing and pretending not to hear the way the wind sometimes cried. Snow fell like sifted flour from a grandmother's hand, soft, relentless, nearly soundless. It clung to the folds of his wool blanket and settled on her hair, which had dried stiff and tangled since the barn. She didn't brush it away. She didn't seem to notice the cold at all. They rode at a slow, patient pace. His horse, a roan gelding that answered more to rhythm than reins, carried them without complaint through a thicket of pine and low stone ridges. The girl rode ahead of him, her back straight but her shoulders tight, like she was bracing for a blow that hadn't come yet. The fire was just where he said it would be, an old campsite tucked between two granite shoulders, ringed in stones blackened from use. He'd left it 3 days earlier, when the snow threatened deeper drifts. When they arrived, the coals were long dead, but the shelter remained, a lean-to of pine boughs, tarp, and instinct. She dismounted before he could help her, knees nearly giving, but she caught herself with a breath and a hand to the horse's flank. He saw her eyes tighten, pain or pride, or both. She didn't speak as he unpacked flint and dry bark from his satchel. She only watched, crouched near the circle of stones like a stray dog watching a stranger set out food. He struck flame, fed it with care. When the fire rose enough to cast soft orange against the snow, she moved closer. Still, she said nothing. He passed her a tin of beans and a heel of hard bread. She took them, ate slow at first, then faster, like someone remembering hunger. Her hands were small, but not delicate. They bore the look of work, of brambles, of rope. "Your name," she said, finally, without looking up. "I didn't ask it." "Wicasa," he said. She nodded, chewing, then swallowed. "Means man, doesn't it?" "In my language." "Fitting." He didn't answer that. Let silence curl around the fire again. It wasn't awkward, just cautious, like two people walking a frozen lake, feeling for cracks beneath every step. She leaned back after a time and rested her elbows in the snow behind her, legs crossed, boots steaming from the fire's slow thaw. "My family came west in wagons. Missouri-born, with land promises and preacher's prayers," she said. "Papa died of fever before we crossed the first ridge. Mama followed a month later. We buried her with a tin cross and what was left of our bread." Her voice didn't shake. It barely moved at all. "It was just me and my brother after that. Jacob. He was 14. Thought himself a man." A pause. A breath. The fire popped. He made friends with a man in a blue coat. Seemed kind. Had horses. Promised help. Shelter. Trade. Wicasa didn't interrupt. He only looked at the flame and listened. He offered to take us both into the next town. Said the trail was dangerous for just two. Jacob believed him. I didn't. But I followed. Her hands tightened over her knees. First night in camp, that man tied Jacob's hands behind his back and traded him to a band of freight runners heading north. Said boys fetch a good price if they can swing a pick. Silence again, the kind that could pull trees apart. "I tried to fight," she said, her voice dimmer now. "He hit me hard enough I saw 2 moons. Woke up in that barn. Don't know how long I was there. Just no one came. She didn't cry. There were no tears left. Only ash where the fire once lived. When she finished, she looked over at him. You gonna tell me that's what happens to girls who trust strangers? No. He fed another stick into the fire. I'm going to tell you that a man who hurts the helpless loses more than his name. He loses his soul. She gave a soft laugh at that. Not mocking. Just tired. Sounds like something a preacher would say. He shook his head. No preacher ever taught me it. She tilted her head at him, eyes narrowing as if trying to see the story behind his face. You kill men, Wakasa? I have. Do you regret it? He thought about that. Not quick. Not slow either. Just with care. Only once, he said. The others, they left me no better choice. Did that one? He looked at her. Not away. He begged like a boy, and then spit in my face. I cut his throat anyway. Annaline didn't flinch. She nodded like that made him real. Would you do it again? If I had to. Her breath left her slow. Not fear. Not approval. Just understanding. They sat like that as the night grew heavier and the snow dimmed the sky. The fire kept a small circle of life in the middle of all that cold. Two people, one broken open, the other stitched shut with silence, bound by the fact that neither had run. He offered her a blanket. She took it. He laid a second near the fire, not beside her, but not far either. A respectful space. One that spoke without saying, I am here, but I will not cross what you do not offer. She lay down, turned on her side to face the flame. He watched the trees for a while, then the stars, then her. Jacob might still be alive, she murmured, half asleep now. He might. But I'm not strong enough to go looking. You don't have to be, he said. Not yet. She closed her eyes. Do you believe people get to start again? He didn't answer that. Not right away. But in the quiet that followed, as the fire dipped low and the snow whispered against the lean-to, she whispered one more thing. You didn't come for a horse, did you? No, he said. She smiled then, just faintly. The horse was a lie. He added a final stick to the fire. Watch to catch. But the girl, he said, almost to the night, the girl was real. And beside him, under the blanket, she slept without flinching. The storm arrived not with thunder, but with stillness, as if the land itself paused to listen before surrendering. Snow thickened into walls of white, and the wind braided through the pine tops, whispering secrets in a tongue older than fire. For 3 days, the world narrowed to the lean-to, the fire, and the two lives huddled near it. Annaline moved slower now, not from fear, but from presence. Her steps held weight. Her gaze no longer darted like a bird too used to being hunted. Wakasa noticed it in the way she folded her blanket in the morning, in how she stirred the fire with steady hands instead of trembling ones. She rarely asked questions, but she listened to everything. He showed her how to check the traps along the ridge trail, told her which bark made good tinder when everything else was wet. She watched him carefully, memorizing without saying. She was learning to survive, not as someone who had been broken, but as someone learning how to live again. On the second day, she spoke while he carved a strip of cedar. You ever have someone you'd give your life for? She asked. Wakasa didn't look up. His hands moved in rhythm, the blade shaving thin curls from the wood that fell into the firelight. My sister, he said. Her name was Winyen. She laughed too loud, sang while she worked, hid food under her blanket to feed children from other lodges. She sounds kind. She was, he said, kind enough to be stolen. Annaline turned toward him slowly. Soldiers came after the treaty, said our camp was too close to the river, said we had no right to fish where our grandfathers drank. Winyen was 17. She told them no. They took her anyway. He set the carved wood aside. It was shaping into a comb. I never saw her again, but I still set food out on the winter solstice, in case she finds her way home. Annaline was quiet for a long time. The wind lifted the edge of the tarp and let it fall again. My brother, she began, then stopped. He used to make up stories. Told me I was secretly a queen and our wagon was a castle on wheels. Said I had fire in my hair, like the sun couldn't quite let me go. She touched her red braid absent-mindedly. I think he believed it too. Even when we ran out of salt and the ox died, he still called me Your Majesty. She smiled then, soft and crooked. I hated it. Wakasa smiled with her, just a small tilt of the lips. Then he passed her the carved comb. She turned it over in her hands, and something caught in her throat before she could thank him. That night, she fell asleep closer to the fire, her face turned toward him. By the third day, the storm broke like a fever. The sky opened in streaks of pale blue, and sunlight shimmered over the snow like forgiveness. Birds returned. A fox crossed the ridge at dawn. Wakasa watched the prince vanish behind it. They walked together that morning to fetch more dry pine. The forest was bright, but not warm. Everything glittered like glass. I keep seeing it, she said suddenly, walking beside him, boots crunching. That barn, the smell, the silence. He didn't interrupt. I close my eyes, and it's there again. Like my mind thinks it might happen again, so it keeps the memory sharp. Wakasa nodded. Smoke does that, he said. It clings to your skin even after the fire's out. Adeline looked at him, brow furrowed. You think it ever leaves? No, he said, and then paused. But I think after a while you stop smelling it. She let the silence settle again, then said, maybe. They returned to camp to find the fire burned low, a ribbon of smoke twisting into the air. Wakasa crouched to feed it more wood, and Adeline laid the pine across the stack without being asked. When the flame returned, she leaned her hands toward it and whispered, What if I can't forgive what happened to me? He didn't answer immediately. His eyes followed the smoke rising from the fire. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, he said. It's just putting down the knife you've been holding to your own throat. She stared into the flames. I'm not ready, she said. You don't have to be. Later, they took turns sharpening the blade she found in his saddlebag, a small one, meant for gutting fish or skinning game. She held it carefully, but without fear now. When he asked if she wanted to keep it, she nodded once. You'll need it, he said. Out there. She glanced at the trees, then back at him. Are you sending me away? No. Then where's out there? He looked at her then, steady, deep. Anywhere you decide to stand. That night, she didn't sleep near the edge of a lean-to. She curled her blanket beside his, and when the wind moaned low in the trees, she didn't wake. But the next morning, as the sun broke over the hills in streaks of rose and gold, a thin pillar of smoke rose beyond the western trees. A new one, blacker, heavier. Wakasa rose and stared at it, then scanned the snow line for prints. A single set of wagon tracks curved like a wound into the distance. He said nothing, but she stood beside him now, jaw clenched. They followed us, she said, or came looking for what they lost. Adeline touched the knife at her hip. Then let's not be easy to find. He looked at her, long and full. You're not the same girl I found in that stall. She turned her eyes toward the smoke. No, she said, soft as ash. I'm not. And in her voice was no fear, only fire. The forest was no longer silent. Birds scattered too quickly that morning, wings startled. The wind moved oddly, not like a friend brushing past, but like a man stepping too close without speaking. Wakasa noticed. He always did. He watched the trees breathe and saw where the snow bent beneath fresh weight. There were wagon tracks in the low trail, new ones, less than half a day old. Deep ruts angled wrong, not from freight or trade. A hunter's wagon maybe, or worse, someone pretending to be. He crouched beside them, touched two fingers to the crushed grass beneath. The snow had been brushed away, hurried, as if someone didn't want to be followed. But they had already arrived. He returned to the camp with pine needles stuck to his boots and a tightness in his chest he hadn't felt since war. Adeline was near the fire, wrapping the last of the bread in cloth, humming under her breath. A small thing, but he could hear the strength in it now, not joy exactly, but the steadiness that comes when fear finally retreats. When she looked up, he didn't have to speak. Her face stilled. Her hands paused, still holding the bundle. How many? She asked. 2, maybe 3. She swallowed and stood slowly, brushing her palms down the front of her coat. I should have known he'd come. You did. She nodded, jaw set. "I'll run," she said. "Don't look at me like that. I'm not afraid. Just don't want you getting caught in someone else's fire." He shook his head. "I didn't carry you from that barn to watch you vanish into another one." She opened her mouth, to argue maybe, or thank him, but the snap of a branch stole the air between them. They turned as one. A man stepped into the clearing. The same blue coat, frayed now at the hem, stained along the sleeves. His hair had thinned and his beard had grown wild, but his smile was the same, crooked and cruel. He looked older, as if guilt had aged him faster than time. "Well now," he said, spreading his arms like a preacher calling down rain. "Ain't this a fine picture?" Adeline didn't move, didn't flinch. Her hand drifted toward the knife at her hip. He saw it and laughed. "Easy, darlin'. That's no way to greet someone who looked after you. You tied me like cattle." He grinned wider. "And you screamed like a barn cat when I did." Wakasa stepped forward. One pace. That was all. The man's eyes flicked to him. "And you are?" Wakasa didn't answer. Another figure emerged behind the first, broader, rough-faced, a scattergun slung casually across one shoulder. The kind of man who followed orders without asking why. His eyes were dull, but not slow. "See, this ain't no place for a girl to go playing pioneer," the first man said. "World's cold. Men do things they ain't proud of, like taking what's owed." "You think she owes you," Wakasa said. "I know she does. Food. Company. Half a wagon. Hell, her brother barely paid the cost of the feed before I shipped him off." Wakasa's breath slowed, deepened. "You sold a child." "I traded labor," he said. "It's legal enough in Dakota. And what do you care? You ain't even." He didn't finish the sentence. Something in Wakasa's eyes made the words fall apart. "Leave," Wakasa said. The other man shifted his grip on the scattergun. "I ain't leaving," the first man replied. "She's coming back with me, or this gets ugly." Adeline stepped forward, slow and steady. The fire cracked behind her, catching a pine knot, sending sparks into the gray sky. "I'm not going anywhere with you," she said. Her voice didn't shake. He snorted. "Girl, you ain't got the spine." He didn't see her move. 1 second she was standing. The next she had drawn the knife and hurled it. It missed his chest, buried itself into the wood of the tree beside his head. But that wasn't the point. The man flinched. The second man raised the scattergun, but Wakasa had already moved. He didn't draw steel. He didn't shout. He crossed the clearing in 3 strides and knocked the gun aside with a blow from his shoulder. The bigger man stumbled. Wakasa grabbed the front of his coat and drove him backward into a tree trunk with a force that cracked bark. The gun dropped into the snow. The first man backed away, tripped over a root, and fell. Adeline was on him in a second. He reached for something, a pistol, a knife, but she kicked it from his hand, then planted her boot on his chest and pressed just enough to keep him still. She looked down at him, her breath sharp, her eyes alive with something older than anger. "I should kill you," he whimpered. "You ain't that kind." She leaned down, voice like iron pulled from fire. "No, I'm worse. I remember." Wakasa spoke behind her, low and calm. "Don't waste what you rebuilt." She looked at him, then down at the man. "You're going to crawl out of this clearing," she said. "Without your gun, without your wagon. If I ever see your face again, I won't miss next time." He stared up at her, breathing ragged. "Do you understand me?" she said. He nodded, croaked something that might have been a yes. Adeline stepped back. The man staggered to his feet, glancing between them like a cornered animal, then turned and ran, slipping once in the snow before disappearing into the trees. The larger man followed, limping, dragging the scattergun with a broken sling. Wakasa let the silence settle again. Adeline turned slowly, let the last of the tension bleed from her fingers. The fire still burned, quiet and bright. He picked up the knife she had thrown and handed it back to her, handle first. She took it without a word. Their eyes met. She smiled then, small, fierce. "I think I'm ready," she said. Wakasa didn't ask for what. He only nodded, because he believed her. The sky was soft the morning after they sent the past running, the kind of pale, endless blue that looked painted. too still to be real. Snow melted slow along the southern ridge, dripping from the trees in fat drops that landed with purpose. Somewhere far off, a hawk called once and was silent. Annaline sat at the fire, combing her fingers through damp curls with the wooden teeth Wakasa had carved. Each pull through her hair was steadier than the last, a quiet ritual that seemed to root her more deeply into herself. Her coat smelled of pine smoke and thawed earth. Her boots were muddy at the toes. She didn't look tired anymore. Wakasa watched from the edge of the camp as she moved, not like a woman recovering, but like one arriving. She stirred the last of the oats with a carved spoon and tasted them with care. No rush, no flinch. Her knife sat beside her, not clutched, not hidden, simply there. A tool now, not a shield. "You could go anywhere," he said, voice low. She glanced up, then back to the fire. "I could. There's a train east in 3 days' walk, and a wagon train west come spring." "I know." She didn't offer anything more, not yet. He stepped closer, slow, as if not to disturb something sacred. She looked up at him fully, now, her gaze steady. "I thought about running," she said. "Even after they came. Especially then. I kept thinking, if I go far enough, none of it will follow." "Did it?" She nodded. "It always does." She rose, dusting her hands, then moved to the saddlebag she'd packed before dawn. Her fingers hovered over it, then fell away. "I packed like I meant to go," she said. "Laid everything out. Counted rations. Rolled blankets tight, like Pa taught me. But then I stood there, staring at the straps, and it hit me." She looked at him, her voice suddenly quiet. "I don't want to leave." Wind moved between them. Cold, honest, clean. "I don't want to be a story someone almost remembers," she said. "I want to plant something. Build something. I want to stay until I forget how it felt to be afraid." She stepped closer now. "Not too close. Just enough. But I won't stay because you saved me. I'm not staying to repay a debt or fill a place." She searched his face, and Wakasa felt it, not a demand, not a plea, but a kind of offering. "I'm staying because I chose to." His throat tightened, the way it hadn't in years. He nodded once, slow, then said the only thing that mattered. "Then it's your land now, too." They broke camp together, not in silence, but in calm, two people used to doing things with purpose. The fire was buried, the lean-to taken down, the ground left cleaner than they'd found it. They walked for hours, side by side through the thawing woods, until the trees thinned and opened into the rim of a Lakota village nestled in a shallow valley. Smoke curled gently from the lodges. Children's laughter rose like the first breeze of spring. As they approached, heads turned, some with curiosity, some with cautious memory. Wakasa raised a hand in greeting. One of the elders, a woman with silver in her braids and lines carved by wind and time, stepped forward. Her gaze passed over Annaline without scorn, only thoughtfulness. She studied the girl's posture, the small knife on her belt, the fire in her eyes. Then she stepped close and touched a hand to Annaline's cheek. "You walk like someone who's seen ghosts," the woman said in a language that floated more than it spoke. "I have," Annaline replied. "But they do not ride you anymore." "No," she whispered. "They walk behind me now." The elder nodded. "Then you are welcome." They made a place for her that evening beside the main lodge. A cot. A basin of warm water. No questions. Just quiet space to be. That night, by the fire, Wakasa sat with her again. The stars above them blinked bright and sharp, unhidden by smoke or sorrow. "I can ride on," he said. "There's a herd in the south I've yet to see." Annaline tilted her head. "Do you want to?" He didn't answer right away. His hands rested on his knees, palms open. "I thought I did," he said. "But that was before I found something worth building." She leaned toward him, not quite touching, but near. "You think we can build something?" she asked. "Only if you lay the first stone." She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a smooth river rock, warm from her palm. She set it between them, near the fire. "Then let's start here." And in that moment, nothing needed to be said. Not about the barn, not about the men, not even about the scars. They would stay. They would build. And whatever came, frost, fire, or strangers with hollow threats, they would face it not as ghosts or fugitives, but as people who had chosen to live. The next morning, the first frost of spring kissed the grass. Annaline woke early, tied back her hair, and helped grind maize with the village women. She laughed once, surprised by the sound. Wicasa watched from across the clearing, his heart quiet, his hand still. A child ran past them chasing a wooden hoop, and for a moment everything, the pain, the silence, the smoke of the past, drifted behind the mountains. Sometimes, he thought, the barn they lock you in isn't the end. It's just where someone is meant to find you.